Hey, welcome to Film Fanatics, three film geeks discussing movies both new and old. My name is Dan.
My name is Justin.
And I'm Joe.
This week, see some interesting sequels, Terminator Genisys and Mike XXL, plus indie features Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, and The Cobbler. In our triple feature of older films, we'll review the timely new classic Despicable Me 2, my pick for old classic, another timely one, Wet Hot American Summer, and the Oscar-nominated Judy Garland musical Babes in Arms. Now, in honor of the second Magic Mike film, our top 5 this week is our favorite cinematic strippers. First up, though, we're going to go to Joe with Terminator Genisys. Joe, tell us about it.
Makes sense. Well, this film is obviously another sequel, or a prequel, or depending how you want to look at it. It's the fifth film in the franchise now. And it comes back with Arnold Schwarzenegger once again in the main role, along with Jason Clarke, Emilia Clarke, who I'm pretty sure is not related.
I believe they are not related.
I'm pretty sure because she's from Game of Thrones and he's from Apes, so I'm pretty sure there's a country
they could never be.
Them. Never could be, and Jay Courtney is Kyle Reese. John Connor basically sends Kyle Reese back in time to protect Sarah Connor, basically like the first movie. But when he arrives in 1984, nothing is as expected to go by as planned. John Connor sends Kyle Reese back in time to protect Sarah Connor, but when he arrives, well, another Terminator was sent back to save Sarah Connor when she was much younger, and waits to take out the Terminator from the original film. Then Skynet sends a whole new threat to kill them both, actually a couple new ones, though this time in yet another timeline, while using an ultimate social networking platform called Genysis, which connects to Facebook and army tanks. Yeah, that's a real thing. Which means the Judgment Day was prevented. But then it wasn't. Don't worry about it, it's pretty dumb. I did like the version of John Connor, though. I thought Jason Clarke did a good job with him. I thought they did a good job making him seem very human, as opposed to just being this ultimate legend, which most of the other movies really haven't done a good job of so far, so that was pretty good. I also thought the opening of the movie was great. Like, the future was awesome. It really was kind of a good retrospective look in those earlier films with the haunting laser beams, with all the machines. It was a good setup, but I thought it looked like it was, gonna hit the fuel, and then everything else kind of happened afterwards when they went back in time. The actors were all cast well, though. I thought they all did a pretty good job with their performances. The big problem, though, is that the script, the plot is really dumb. It's just overly complicated and silly, which is kind of following the tradition of the last couple sequels, unfortunately. Plus, the action scenes are surprisingly forgettable and lackluster, and with most of the special effects, especially the T-1000, who briefly comes back and is really wasted with Bong Lee. I don't know why they even bothered to have him cast if he doesn't get to fight anybody. Made the 1991 effects look superior. I mean, that's definitely worth noting. Plus, what Skynet does with John Connor, apparently this was in a trailer I didn't see, so I didn't know about this twist. So it kind of angered me a bit more, but you guys probably know what that is. And I would argue it goes against the very nature of the mythos. I mean, it's trying to do a twist, which I liked, but there are definitely two ways to look at that. Ultimately, though, this movie is a mess, but it does get some things right. It's the best T-movie in a while, but that's not saying much. I'm going to leave it with a C.
Well, you guys introduced me to the Terminator world earlier this year with the first two films, but hearing how terrible the third and fourth installments were, plus watching the trailer for Genisys, I can't say I was really excited for this chapter very much. In that sense, I can say at least I wasn't let down. With each one of these movies, it seems more and more that none of it even matters, because you could just keep sending Terminators back to fix everything and then just go to another timeline, so who cares? That's kind of how I feel about it. The special effects are okay. I agree they were a little touch and go. Like, you mentioned you didn't like them, but I think in some aspects, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger rendering from 1984 Schwarzenegger, I thought that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff is on point, but some does seem a bit like...
rushed, kind of?
Not even rushed, but you kind of like you said, like it looked better in the 1991 Judgment Day
But the T-1000 was the best example of that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And also the 3D was utterly pointless.
Oh yeah, I did watch it in 3D. I forgot about that.
I know, I did too.
Yeah.
But we did, and it was stupid. J.K. Simmons has a very short appearance here that's good. Mm-hmm. It gives the movie just about the only jolt of life, I felt like. Mm-hmm. I do like Jason Clarke typically, so I didn't mind him here. I don't know the Emilia Clarke woman. I don't watch Game of Thrones, but she was fine. Arnold seems like he's having a good time, battling his former self. But I do have to say, if I see one more movie of his where somebody jokes about how old he looks, including Arnold himself, which we see in this movie several times over, I'm just gonna lose it. Like I can't. It was The Last Stand, Expendables. We get it. You're old.
You don't like
on with the next thing.
Yeah, like on with the next thing. Even in our favorite Joe, Escape Plan, they make old age comments.
Yeah, you can kind of get past it. Anthony Hopkins doesn't really joke about his age too much.
No, there's other things that you can do in a movie. Ultimately, for me, there just was not that much good about Genisys. I'm slightly below you, Joe. It's a C-. Justin?
Your reviews thus far have you're not going to find too
Pretty
much
on point.
Well, that's
pretty on point.
I can't imagine.
As the old saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and I would argue so is the status of the Terminator franchise. And here's the problem with that. Terminator 1 and 2 are fantastic movies. You're not going to hear any of us three say otherwise.
Most people.
Yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, came T3, which added in a bunch of narrative devices which were a nightmare, and then came Terminator Salvation that tried to make it work and make it canon without ruining anything, and kind of backfired. It wasn't as bad as T3, but it was still pretty underwhelming. So I don't fault Terminator Genisys for taking the Mad Max Fury Road and X-Men Days of Future Past route of being a reboot but also a sequel at the exact same time. But here's the problem with that in this case. In trying to sort of nullify the events of Terminator 3 and Terminator Salvation, it also nullifies the events of the Terminator in T2,
exactly,
which everybody loves. So it becomes a matter of almost backhanded fan service in that regard. Some of the Easter eggs are still entertaining. J.K. Simmons is great, playing a character that most fans of the series will recognize.
Though, to be honest, they could have just gotten Lance Henriksen and it would have been about the same age.
Yeah.
So I don't know what was up with that. But
what's he doing, right?
Voice work? I don't think much.
Maybe he didn't want to do it.
He showed up for
Maybe he read the script.
Well, Dan, he also was an AVP.
Oh, that is true.
So I don't know about that.
All right, well,
beggars can't be choosers, I guess. But
yeah, whatever.
But I mean, I've never really felt bored with this movie. I did like some of the angles they were taking. The first 30 minutes, I'm with you, Joe. Pretty good stuff.
Pretty solid, yeah.
But then once they start going back, they try to make it stand on its own 2 feet in a new direction. It gets all sorts of odd. I do like the angle they were taking, though, in terms of the status of John Connor. What if the greatest symbol of hope for humanity wasn't? I think that's a really interesting angle, and I feel like had they gone through a couple revisions or at least tightened a couple things up, it could have been a really awesome angle, because let's face it, the last couple attempts at trying to do a unique Terminator, not quite so good.
No.
But here, there's some good things about it. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about a future installment or two. I also don't think it should be rebooted again or remade. It's average. I leave it with a C.
Do you guys like that Arnold came back, or does it not matter?
I think that was probably the biggest issue with Salvation, was they just sort of were like, yeah, he was in Terminator. We got a CGI version of him for half a second, and that irritated everyone. So I feel like, yeah, it's kind of hard to do Terminator without him now.
Okay. Joe, what do you think?
I mean, I know that he is, like, obviously the face of the franchise, but there have been Terminator things without him before. I mean, Salvation was barely with him, and there is, of course, the Sarah Connor Chronicles. So you
Which
can
nobody liked.
Some people did. The thing is, I think it's possible to do Terminator without Arnold, and I think it's possible to do Terminator without time travel, even. There are many different aspects of the world you could do. I think they're just trying to ultimately rehash the first 2 movies, and this one admittedly does try to do something different again, instead of like Terminator 3, where it was literally just trying to do T2 again, but much sillier. This one, I mean, I like some of the angles. I kind of feel like if Arnold was willing to kind of like be there as a passing of the torch kind of thing for like a newer generation to reboot it, or have a new
kind of like a Nimoy,
or First Class, because obviously he can't do it forever. I mean, if he does as long as he wants to, great. But I was kind of thinking, honestly, Arnold was one of the best parts of the movie for me, because he actually looked like he was having fun, unlike T3, where he obviously wasn't. So,
You could tell his heart wasn't in it.
So he was trying. He was having fun with it, and I like that. He definitely was one of the bright spots of the movie. No problems with him, but you could have honestly done the movie without him, and it would have been okay. It's almost like they have him there to stamp it, to say Arnold's in it, so it's okay.
It's right.
It's gay. Do you remember T2? It's okay. It's got to be okay. And I'm like, let's get past that. Let's stop relying so much on Arnold. Let's stop relying so much on not just time travel, but multiple time travel within the same storyline, which is a bit iffier and definitely caused some problems with this one. They were definitely on the right track with John Connor. If they bring Jason Clarke back, which I hope they do in future movies, I'm fine with that. If you're going to do evil John Connor, make him a better villain.
I feel like it's also serving as sort of like a beginner piece for people who haven't seen Terminator, which I don't think...
Who hasn't seen Terminator?
A lot of people,
actually. I didn't until 6 months ago.
I was going to say...
And I liked it way better than this piece of garbage.
Well,
I agree, but if...
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, even if you haven't seen it, do you really need to... Do you really need to go into this one without knowing it? Because people know the general idea of Terminator, right?
True, but regardless, as a conceit, Justin...
Please.
If this were the first Terminator I'd ever seen... I would never... It's like when I saw Alien Resurrection before anything else. I never wanted to watch an Alien movie again. What would the point be?
Bad first impression.
Terrible. Bad first impression.
Yeah.
So, ideally, I think they would want people to see the first couple of movies before watching this. Because if this is their entry into the series, forget it.
I actually thought it was opposite. I didn't think it was supposed to be a start over. I thought it was supposed to be kind of a lot of callbacks for old fans. Because... One of the things that irritated me, and I know you said you liked it, Dan, but the fact that they recreated some of those original scenes, I'm like, why not just have the shots?
No, I didn't say I liked it. I said the effects were cool.
I can't. There's no other word
Stock
to describe
footage
it.
wouldn't work in those scenes, Joe.
It would have been fine. The point is, okay, fine, but then don't do them because that was pointless. That was pointless.
No, I'll agree with that. I mean, alternate timeline, you don't have to do that. But at the same time, if you're going to be a reboot of sorts, you got to give people some sort of in, particularly if you're starting anew in this regard.
I don't think Fury Road did. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't seen the other Mad Max movies, but it didn't seem like there was a lot of callbacks.
There were Easter eggs, and the first 2 minutes were ish in that regard. But
that's kind of a bad example, though, because the thing is this: it's done in the spirit of the Mad Max movies, because obviously George Miller. But like all the Mad Max movies, it's very different from all the other ones. So if you get into this one, you say, I want to check out Mad Max because I knew a guy that I saw the movie with that never saw Mad Max before. He's like, wow, this is awesome. I want to watch Mad Max now. I think it's definitely a good introduction, but you don't necessarily need the other movies. I mean, heck, it had been like 10 years since I'd watched them. It wasn't fresh in my mind, but I want to go back. I went back and watched Road Warrior again.
Nice.
So worked for me. This one, well, I watched Terminator 2 recently, so I'm good right now.
That was enough.
I'm not going to cry deeply. I mean, I thought there were things about it I liked. I just was disappointed.
All right. Well, up next we have Magic Mike XXL, and this is a sequel to the surprise 2012 hit. And in it, Channing Tatum, as retired stripper Mike Lane, returns to Florida to meet up with the remaining Kings of Tampa as they road trip for one last performance at a contest in Myrtle Beach. Matthew McConaughey as Dallas does not return, nor does Alex Pettyfer as the Kid or Cody Horn, though the rest of the crew is on hand, including Matt Bomer, Joe Manganiello, Kevin Nash, and Gabriel Iglesias. Jada Pinkett Smith joins the cast as Rome, the proprietor of a male entertainment club who used to employ Mike, and others joining up this time around include Elizabeth Banks, Amber Heard, Donald Glover, and Andy McDowell. Gregory Jacobs takes over from Steven Soderbergh in the director's chair, though Soderbergh is credited with cinematography and editing here, and Reed Carolyn, who wrote the first film, also returns. Now, the first time I saw the original Magic Mike, I was not convinced it was any good. It had these rave reviews. Rotten Tomatoes had it at like an 80%. I wasn't getting it. But 2 more theatrical watches later, and since then 3 home video viewings, it now stands for me at a solid B+. It knows what it is, and it has fun with it. XXL struggles, though, in that department. Sometimes it seems forced with the fun, especially the camaraderie between the guys, who go from basically set dressing in the first film to main characters here. And because of this, it isn't until Pinkett Smith shows up that the film gets interesting at all. McConaughey is very much missed, as is Soderbergh's keen eye behind the lens. However, Tatum is in fine form as Mike once again, and gives nuances to the character's behavior and speech patterns that make Mike stand out from any of the other characters he's played. You can tell this is the exact same character from the first Magic Mike. The pacing of the film, I don't think is what audiences are looking for. The first one had a lot of dance routines throughout. Here, the Kings of Tampa don't really dance at all until the end of the film at the contest, where it's like a whole 20-minute segment. It makes sense within the confines of the story, But I can't imagine that the opening weekend audience for this film, a record-breaking 96% female, was looking for a lot of story. So I leave Magic Mike XXL with a C+. Justin?
I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the first film. I think it's interesting. I think there's a lot of unique angles with it. Soderbergh obviously is a great director behind the camera, even though I think the political aspect of it was extremely heavy-handed. Some of the side characters were weak, and most of the dance sequences were essentially reduced to montages. The sequel, on the other hand, doesn't really have much more to say than escapist exhibitionism. Now, to give it a little bit of credit, the characters from the original, who were, as Dan put it brilliantly, set dressing, are much more fleshed out. Surprisingly, among the bunch, Kevin Nash, who I think actually has a relatively decent arc this time around.
He's always been one of my favorite characters.
The laziest stripper.
He's great.
The biggest issue is, I feel like the story about halfway through the movie gets reduced to these ridiculously episodic interludes where it's like, oh, we're on a road trip, let's go here, weird thing will happen, let's go here, weird thing will happen, and we'll have some excuse to get one person to dance and come into themselves and have this feel-good experience. It's entertaining, and the first, 4 are actually a lot of fun. One particular song from the 90s will never be the same again. However, the other 19 in the second half of the movie are incredibly long. In some regards, I actually like it a lot more than the first one, but it's still not much more than a fluff piece. I leave it with a C+.
Well, for full disclosure, I mean, you really don't like the first one that much. I mean, yes,
You're not wrong.
You go back and forth on it, but I mean, I believe you stand on your C-, yes?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, I definitely think this is worse than the first one. Joe did not get to see it, so this is going to sort of be a back and forth between Justin and I, but the episodic nature of the dance routines, I'll give you, was in the first film, and it's definitely here too, but the problem is that most of the dance routines are not with the crew. I mean,
I'll give you that.
Once they get to Jada Pinkett's house, okay, we see Donald Glover, we see a couple other guys, doing their moves, but we don't see hardly anything from the Kings of Tampa, and that's the reason people go to these movies.
The whole group together.
Yeah, the whole group together, and Matthew McConaughey certainly was part of that. I think his absence is really missed. I don't miss the kid at all.
No, I'll give you that one.
And I don't miss Cody Horn at all.
And rightfully so. However,
I liked her in the first movie, mind you, more than most.
I have very mixed feelings about how they handled her absence. However, I'll be honest, I thought Jada Pinkett Smith was a really good replacement for McConaughey.
Well, yeah, that's why, like I said, the movie doesn't get interesting until she shows up. I mean, that's why Dallas is so missed, because the first, I would say, 40 minutes of the movie is just them, minus McConaughey.
Goofing off and...
Once Pinkett Smith shows up, sure, she's aces. But that takes a long time. And Elizabeth Banks was a nice surprise in the one scene she was in.
Yeah.
The scene with Andie MacDowell and her friend was like...
completely nix that scene.
Yeah, I like her as an actress sometimes.
And it goes on for 20, 25 minutes.
It goes on very long. And honestly, the whole Amber Heard thing I didn't care about.
I don't understand where they were heading with that. It's like...
I thought it was going to be maybe romantic, and then it wasn't at all.
It's quite possibly the strangest platonic relationship I've seen on film in about 3 years.
Yeah, so I'm surprised that you like this one more than the first one. I know you had a lot of issues with the first one, but between Soderbergh and McConaughey and a coherent storyline that a person might actually care about, there's no stakes here. Okay, they want to dance for one last time. That's cool. He mentions his furniture company. He briefly mentions Cody Horn's absence. But just nothing really happens.
No, but I mean, in the first one, it's fairly tedious in that regard as well. I mean...
Not really, because you've got the whole back and forth between Mike and the kid, and then the romantic subplot with Mike and Cody Horn. You've got neither of those things in this movie. It's a buddy road trip movie, basically, with some...
To be honest,
shirts lifting up.
But I like those relationships. I like the fact that these guys who were basically two-dimensional wooden in the first movie actually got something to do, and for the most part, I cared about where they were heading as characters. I
kind of didn't.
I like the twist on Kevin Nash's character about 2/3 of the way in.
Yeah, he's fine, but I have to say, character for character, I didn't care about as many people in this movie as I did in the first one.
I mean, you mentioned the kid. I thought he was annoying. I thought he was incredibly unlikable.
Yeah, but that's what he was supposed to be. That was the point. The point of that movie was to showcase how great of a person Mike was.
And I get that.
Joe, you've seen the first one. I mean,
Yeah.
Would you agree with that sentiment?
I would agree with that statement. I think that the weirdest thing, though, by the sound of it, is that I think that not interspersing them with dance is just doing like a whole 20-minute thing at the end.
Like
seems
Justin
really
said,
unbalanced.
yeah, like Justin said, they're doing more like comedy bits.
Well,
and a couple of them, like there's the one in the convenience store that we saw in the preview, that's featuring one of them doing a routine.
Well, from what it sounds like from what you guys have said, it sounds like they're actually trying to produce a plot line that's more what you would have expected when they marketed the first one. Kind of more,
which is why a lot of audience members were incredibly infuriated by the first one, because it went from being a stripper movie to this weird social commentary about what's wrong with America, followed by weird drug subplot that eats up the last third of the movie.
And that's the interesting thing about Magic Mike, is that it's definitely not what you're expecting. And I do like those aspects of the movie. I never really talked about it much, but I do feel like it's probably at its best when just kind of having fun and being almost exploitation, which I think it should have had more of, because some of the balance with the drama is interesting, but I don't know how it fits. So with this one, it sounds like is it more balanced? And you said it knows what it is, or does it have the similar problem? You said you
no, I said the first one knows what it is.
The first
and
one
has
knows
fun
what it
with
is.
it. I don't think this one is as fun as the first one. I do agree that the drug subplot in the first one kind of brings it down a little bit.
Well,
but
the absence of the kid, though, I mean, he was so crucial to that story. You'd kind of need something to sort of segue in there. I guess, is Mike's story not compelling enough in this one? He's the leader right now,
the
right?
only story really is that he's going through a little bit of a hard time.
So are they.
Like the last
and
one.
his furniture business isn't really taking off.
So it's the first one again.
And, he's single like he was in the first one.
Sounds exciting, Dan.
I know, doesn't it? It makes me want to rush out and see it again. There wasn't enough here for me as had in the first one. But I do agree, Justin. Jada Pinkett Smith is great. And if they, if they're trying to make this movie to sort of spin her off into her own thing, I'd be open to that as well. Anyway, up next is Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, and Justin's going to tell us about that.
Thomas Mann plays Greg, a self-deprecating high schooler with no direction and a love of making bad parodies to classic foreign films. When he's forced by his mother, played by Connie Britton, to visit Rachel, played by Olivia Cooke, a classmate recently diagnosed with cancer. The two strike up a friendship, but as her condition worsens, Greg decides to work with his partner in crime, Earl, played by R.J. Seiler, to make their next film for her. Last year, Joe and I had an interesting conversation in regards to movies people would think we would love, but essentially think personally they're a bit overrated. I think I have a new answer now after watching this film. And it's really infuriating because there's so many things I should love about this movie.
I did think you would like it. That's interesting.
The main character's a film geek. It's got some interesting takes. The parodies are hilarious. So why is this movie so underwhelming to me? Well, I think it all comes down to Mann and the author and screenwriter, Jesse Andrews, giving us a ridiculous Holden Caulfield wannabe who spends probably the first 40 minutes whining and giving us pretentious monologues that are infuriating and grating. And it's a pity because the story does have some interesting things to say. The editing has a lot of really cool techniques. The stop motion is effective in some scenes, not effective in others, but adds a lot of perspective. But if there's anyone to really get behind in this movie, it's Seiler, who at least has the decency to at least call him out at one point and say, "Why are you such a pain?" And in terms of being such a colossal little whiner who's just progressively unlikable, and his motives and statements continue to make less and less sense as the film goes on. Fortunately, the parody movies are entertaining, the clips that we see of them. I wish they had more involvement in them, other than just being a punchline to throw in for decent measure. It's quirky, but there's really no business of them being there. John Barenthal as his teacher is an interesting angle. I don't buy him as a teacher whatsoever. And quite possibly one of the worst interpretations of how anyone handles both high school and the transition to college. Completely and utterly bull. I appreciate them having something to say about following the footsteps of Fault in Our Stars in terms of being a cancer movie and handling with some degree of humor, but also a lot of melancholy in the third act. I feel like the camaraderie between Cook and Man is interesting. I wish there was more of it, which would leave the emotional impact to be more devastating than it actually ends up being. But overall, it's just an extremely underwhelming and pretentious movie. I leave me and Earl and the Dying Girl with a C+.
All right, Joe, let's hear from you.
That's surprising, Justin. Well, I thought it was a great coming-of-age story. I thought the characters were very real, but quirky, much like in Dope. I thought they were reminiscent of that. Also some great characters, and they're a very similar style. I agree with Justin that not all the humor works. Other than that, though, I thought it worked pretty well. My biggest issue, actually, was I thought Earl might have been a little underdeveloped. I kind of wanted more of him.
Well, they bench him in the third act almost completely.
Well, I mean, I think he served his purpose overall, but I wanted a little more balance with him and the main character. Still, I thought the drama worked really well, and I thought that the parodies of the classic films were awesome. They definitely added some much-needed levity. It made me laugh quite a bit. I thought there was a lot of appreciation, and you could tell that the filmmakers have a lot of appreciation for film. Yeah, I thought it was quite touching and tragic and funny and very unique. Maybe a little bit pretentious and hokey at points.
A little bit.
Yeah, but I kind of felt like the character was like somebody I knew and people I knew and grew up with. And I don't know, I mean, maybe I was a little different in high school, Justin, but I don't know, I kind of related to some of the things he was going through. So I'm going to leave Me and Earl with the Dying Girl with an A-. I thought it was quite an excellent movie.
Well, I'm actually right in between you guys. I think there's a lot to like here. I think the acting is good. I really like the characters. And I thought the dialogue rang true. And I think it's a fairly realistic portrayal of high school. I do think, the movie parodies were good. Justin, I don't think we needed to see more of them. I mean, might that have been more humorous? Sure.
No. That wasn't my argument. My argument is I wish they had more weight to the actual story instead of, they're here, they're cute, and they're quirky, but that's about it.
Well, I mean, they do...
I thought they were saying more about him and the way he looked at things.
Yeah, and they do play into
some of the scenes.
How he ends up really relating to her.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think they play a very important role
because they're sharing
in the movie,
they're
to be
watching
honest.
That she's getting sick.
Right.
That's their primary activity.
Right. Whilst also entertaining the audience. But it is suffocated, this movie, by a trying way too hard look and soundtrack and the unnecessary narration, a forced conclusion. On the surface, I would say it seemed like that this would be significantly better than last year's Cancer book adaptation, Fault in Our Stars. But something about that film rings a little bit more authentic than this, though I probably enjoyed this one more. So I'm actually going to leave it with the same grade as I gave that one, which is a B. Right in between you guys. I guess the adult portrayals in this movie...
They're questionable.
Are questionable. Right, but Justin, you're saying none of them are. I think the kids' performances or characters ring pretty true. I mean, Definitely. I think the way he looks at college is fairly reasonable for somebody that's struggling.
Just take his opening monologue. I literally was staring at the screen just thinking, what on earth are you saying?
Well, I did mention that the narration is unnecessary. I mean, that's not the part I'm talking about. I'm talking about his character, not his incessant monologuing with the narrations. I'm with you there.
That is part of his character.
It is, but I would take that out of the movie and just let his character be his character without the...
And I would agree with that.
The Dear Diary moments. No, but it sounds like you don't believe that his character is believable at all. And I don't agree with that.
No, it's not necessarily that I don't believe his character is believable. Pardon the repetition.
It's fine.
It's more or less the matter that I just feel like the screenwriter, Jesse Andrews, who also wrote the book, is making this character like so ridiculously like all-knowing and self-deprecating in that regard. It's like, oh, I'm so lame, but I also have this incredibly poignant outlook on college. I mean, on high school and my future in college. Do you? I'm not so sure.
He probably thinks he has it all figured out.
If I may speak, I think a lot of
18-year-olds kind of
17, 18-year-olds are
they know
very much at odds with their own psyche. I know I certainly was.
I mean, I spent probably the first 40 minutes of this movie calling the main character's bluff.
What bluff exactly?
In regards to the opening monologue, in regards to how he viewed high school life in terms of the ridiculously two-dimensional characters that he was running into at school. The rapper was completely idiotic and wasted.
That wasn't my favorite part.
There are plenty of other films I think are kind of guilty of some
No.
stuff. I mean, even Scott Pilgrim has some pretty two-dimensional high school
Well, that's also
exaggerations.
part of the pun with Scott Pilgrim.
And you could argue that's kind of what they're going for. This is his particular skewed, quirky view of the world. We're seeing these characters through him. Remember his overbearing narration. I mean, these are kind of his characters and his stories. So, I'll be honest. I mean, I thought the goth kid, the rapping kid, yeah, they were pretty stupid. But I mean, I've seen them in my high school, and they didn't seem too three-dimensional as people from what little I knew of them. So, his whole mannerism of kind of going through high school without connecting with anybody, so being so carefully planned. I don't know if many kids would vocalize it quite that well, but there are plenty of people like that try to just kind of float by. So I thought that was, I've known people like that. That's very really believable and realistic to me.
I mean, the trying to avoid people, I can buy. The sneaking off to the teacher's classroom to watch foreign movies and do research.
Could happen.
No, not in high school.
Sorry,
yeah.
It did in my high school, Justin.
There are
so
plenty
wrong.
of Justin. There are
just because
Maybe
it wasn't
college.
your specific
No.
experience doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
I'll back Dan up here. I mean, like just as an example for that. I mean, there in high school there were plenty of like teachers that liked certain students and they might let them hang out with them in between lunches or It happened all the time. It was a common occurrence day to day.
I would also like to counter with the statement that your high school experience was before zero tolerance.
All right, I'll give you that. I'm old. Fine. Touche.
But
No disrespect, you say.
But Joe's wasn't. Joe's the same age as you are, so...
So I mean, I can back that up. That happened, man. You guys are kind of glossing over like the main reason I liked the movie, though.
Please.
Was the whole descent into death. That and how they dealt with it was pretty good, I thought.
Which would have been great if they had built it up better.
Yeah, I liked it better in Fault in Our Stars, for sure. That was one of my issues with it,
I mean,
to be honest.
We didn't get to it until probably halfway through Act 2, and then when it finally does set forth, it should be heartbreaking. It's just, this is sad. I did like the climax. I should say the climax before the initial climax.
I liked the closing scene.
Oh my gosh, no.
You hated it?
That scene started out okay. Did not like the letter bit, which is completely ridiculous.
Well, like I said, I think there's a lot of things in this movie that are trying too hard, and that might have been one of them. But for me, that was the emotional effect of everything.
It sounds to me, Justin, like you just didn't like him very much, and that was the big problem for you.
That's basically where the C plus comes from. Like,
Which I don't really get.
Earl, I liked. The girl, I liked when she got more to do. I didn't like that when she got super quiet, but
It's kind of the situation.
I
though.
get it.
She does have cancer and all. You got to cut her a break.
And I am in that regard.
Sometimes she spoke, sometimes she didn't. That's what he said.
No, I mean, I got that. I got where he was heading with that, is my point. My biggest issue is, though, I just wish either he wasn't the protagonist or at least they gave him more to do so we could at least get behind him more instead of trying extremely too hard and just completely missing the mark.
All right. Well, we definitely need to move on here. It's an agree to disagree on me and Earl, apparently. So let's move on to our home media moment, and that is the Cobbler. Joe?
Max Simkin, played by Adam Sandler, repairs shoes in the same New York shop that has been in his family for generations. Disenchanted with his grind of the daily life, Max stumbles upon a magical heirloom that allows him to step into the lives of his customers and see the world in a whole new way. Sometimes walking in another man's shoes is the only way one can discover who they really are. At least that's what this movie's going for, I guess. What follows are obvious hijinks that might occur in such a scenario, and a crime plot which might happen? I don't know. This movie has a very interesting premise and some odd but kind of believable situations, I guess. It takes a while for Max to grow on you because he is presented as so disgruntled and maybe even kind of despicable. The problem is that the writers obviously weren't sure where to go with this, so most of the primary plot is messy and underdeveloped with a pretty obvious twist. Still, it didn't really lose my interest. I'll leave it with a C-.
Okay. Yeah, The Cobbler is a movie that knows not who it's for or what it's trying to be.
Oh.
It's not wacky enough for Sandler devotees, and it's not compelling or dramatic enough for fans of Sandler's more serious roles. It has an extremely broad comedy concept and uses that in spurts, but far too often for what the film requires. And then it layers on, like you said, Joe, this gangster storyline. Mm-hmm. There's a supposedly touching family subplot that sort of pays off, but not really, and like you said, is quite obvious. Still, I can't say that it bored me at all.
No.
And Sandler's performance I thought was fine, but there's just a ton of wasted opportunities here.
And so many questions towards the
end. Many
end.
questions at the end. I feel like with some fine-tuning, I could see it being a television series in the vein of like a Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
You know, and instead of leaping through time, he leaps into the different people with their shoes. But as a movie, with this script specifically, it definitely needs a lot of work. I actually leave it with a C- as well. Huh. Justin?
Well, here's the good news. It's not the same Happy Madison by-the-numbers garbage. Here's the bad news. It's not any better than that either.
No.
Somewhere in this story could have been a fun and interesting observation on self-appreciation, as well as coming to understand people's lives. But all we really end up getting as viewers is a story that gets progressively creepier as it goes along, until a completely dark tonal shift in around the third act that gets all sorts of strange and bizarre and doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. Sandler's character I was actually okay with for about the first, I want to say 25, 30 minutes. And then the more he played around with the shoes, it just kept getting more and more unsettling for me. It just really left a bad taste in my mouth. It's just a complete disaster of a movie. A glorious disaster, but a disaster. I leave it with a D-.
But not an F.
Not an F. I mean, I'm with Dan a little bit on this one. I do like the concept. And I feel like if they had tweaked it a little bit, found some interesting ways to go with it,
could have been a D+.
I think it could have been a really interesting movie. I could see this being like B caliber.
It's interesting. You didn't like Adam Sandler the further it went along. I actually didn't like him that much in the beginning and thought he got better, actually.
I thought he was pretty fine all the way through. I think his character develops a bit by the end. I don't think he's necessarily creepy.
Well, I think the idea of being in other people's shoes and pretending to be them is what creeped you out, Justin?
I was going to say he's taking people's lives and manipulating them. You can't tell me that's not creepy.
I'm all right with it.
Well, I mean,
as a fantasy conceit,
and it's not like he went into like other people's houses and slept with people's wives. I mean, they could have gone a lot.
He was trying to do good.
He was. You know, it's a little creepy and weird, but it's kind of what made the movie interesting to me. Like, this is odd, but I want to see where it goes.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted more from it, honestly. Like, it could have been a little longer had they expanded on some questions. Like, for instance, that twist. The twist kind of opens like, okay, so if you were this close or around all the time, this person, so where does that leave this other person and the whole situation with the family? Mm-hmm. So it opens a lot of questions, and they kind of try to leave you with more exposition towards the end. And I was actually listening or reading the subtitles on Netflix, and I was just like, okay, so the story about the shoes, and okay, and then it ends. I'm like, so I agree. I feel like it was kind of an uneven pilot for a TV show.
I honestly would be fine if this was a TV show, but now, see, Justin wouldn't watch that show because he would think it was creepy, right?
Depends on how they were going about it.
Because, Quantum Leap, he leaps into people's bodies.
He is other people.
He does become other people. So it's not like it's a conceit that has never been done
to be
before.
fair,
that wasn't my argument.
Quantum Leap
no, I know,
had
but
elements
you're saying
he's creepy too. You could argue
I suppose so.
Like, it's fun. It's presented comedically, but you could argue that might be a little creepy. But it just depends on the presentation.
To me, by far the most compelling component was trying to see these characters and understand and try to see how these people were growing up, but except the movie just basically skirts across the edges. We never really get to know anybody, and in one case, one is basically reduced to a caricature until his character departs from the film.
Nah, I thought that character served his purpose. We certainly learn more about his activities.
But there's no denying that there's a lot of missed opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
And really, I think the tonal
issue
volley is the worst part of the movie. You can't have these silly little scenes and then have this very intense like gangster murder plot.
Yeah.
It just seems like a movie at odds with itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a brilliant way of putting it.
So, all right. Well, I guess we're all on the same page here with The Cobbler. So let's move into our top 5, and that is, in honor of Magic Life, we've got the top 5 strippers. Now, not the movies themselves. These are the characters that we like. And I guess I'll go first with this one. I have an honorable mention. and that is Cher as Tess in Burlesque. I leave her as honorable mention because she's not really a stripper. She's a burlesque dancer, and really not. She doesn't really dance that much in the film because she's sort of the proprietor of the club at this point. But I just really like her character, so I threw her a nod there. Number 5 for me is Demi Moore as Erin Grant in Striptease. Now, this movie is not as horrible as the legend would suppose it to be.
Ebert liked it.
Ebert did like it, but it did win Razzie for Worst Picture of the Year. It's at about 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was up for a bunch of other Razzies that it won. So, not a loved movie, but it's got a lot of good stuff in it. Yeah, it does have, I think, not as much as a Showgirls, let's say. No. But I think, you could say Striptease and people get it. But obviously, this list is not in regards to the movie, so let's talk about her. First of all, she was great on the pole. She moved very well. And this is Demi Moore at the height of her fame. It was in the mid-90s, doing her thing, picking the role she wanted. Something obviously drew her to this FBI agent turned stripper to make ends meet here. Number 4 for me is Marissa Tomei as Cassidy in The Wrestler. We don't see a lot of her actually stripping. It's more of her character development, her character arc with her father. But great movie altogether, and she is obviously an integral part of it. Number 3, Jennifer Aniston as Sarah O'Reilly in We're the Millers. We do see some stripper action here, specifically in the warehouse scene, which is fantastic. It's interesting. All of these ladies so far are of the older variety of stripper. I think these ladies all just have great chops here, and I think Sarah is a very fun character in general. I think she has a lot of fun with Jason Sudeikis playing off of him. And number 2 for me is the youngster of the bunch, and that is Rosario Dawson as Mimi in Rent. She has one of the best songs in the show, and subsequently the film, which is out tonight. And so for that alone, I got to give her a thumbs up. But she is great as well, working the pole. And she's a great singer, Rosario Dawson, just in general. So I think she fits very well in with the Rent motif. And she was one of the few that was not actually in the Broadway show that did the movie. So I thought it was cool that she sort of really, really grasped this character right away.
She holds her own.
Yeah, she really does. With all the people that had been doing their roles for years on Broadway. So, Justin, let's go to you next.
Well, like you, Dan, I'll also have an honorable mention here, and that is to, and I apologize in advance, I might butcher this pronunciation, Santanico Pandemonium, played by Salma Hayek in From Dusk Till Dawn. This isn't a bad choice. Definitely a stripper. It's just, I think it's a little bit overrated. Also bleeds into the whole Quentin Tarantino foot fetish thing that just gets progressively more and more disturbingly entertaining.
Whatever you're into, man.
from movie to movie. He didn't direct this one. He wrote it, but
had to get his foot seen in.
Had to get his foot seen in probably the creepiest way of any collaboration he's had. But to get to the list, number 5 is Cassidy, played by Marissa Tomei in The Wrestler. Like you said, Dan, not a whole lot of stripping in this, but I love her character so much. Only has maybe 20-25 minutes of screen time, but her back and forth with Mickey Rourke are fantastic. Number 4 is a character I will just refer to as BDR, played by Joe Manganiello in Magic Mike XXL.
Okay.
I've been making fun of this character ever since the first movie, but I like that in this one he actually had something to do, and I will happily argue has the best scene in the entire movie. I will not spoil it, but it is glorious. I think his routine at the end was also probably the best of the bunch as well. If they did a spinoff about him, I'd totally be on board. Number 3 is Sarah O'Reilly, played by Jennifer Aniston in We're the Millers. When this came out, I figured this was a shtick that was either going to work really, really well or not at all. And Aniston is up for the challenge and then some. The warehouse scene is fantastic. Her interplay is with Sudeikis and the 2 kids are great as well. Why she's so high in this list for me is the fact that I feel like she has a really good arc.
She does.
We see her do the stripping bits at the beginning, but we also see the more playful and also caring side of her as the film goes on, which I really did enjoy. And my number 2 is Cherry Darling, played by Rose McGowan, Grindhouse, the Planet Terror segment. Hey, what can I say? Stripper with a machine gun. But
Machine gun legs.
with a machine gun leg. She completely buys up with the pulpy nature of it. It keeps it lively. And has quite possibly one of the best 21st century gunfights that will forever stand the test of time. But that's my number 2.
All right, Joe, let's hear from you.
Looks like some pretty good lists so far. Obviously, I have a honorable mention too. Interesting. She's not technically a stripper, but it's one of the great stripping scenes of all time. And that was Jamie Lee Curtis in True Lies. It's kind of hard to beat that. She's pretty hardcore into that. Just kind of somebody who, as a housewife, out of her depth in this hardcore spy issue, and she has to, strip against somebody she doesn't know is actually her husband, and they get some awesome deal. But it's pretty hilarious. But some good stripping there. Number 5 is Jennifer Aniston from Where the Millers, because just the cinematography and just the effects around this, and also just her movements and her whole performance, and her character as well. She does a good arc, and it's one of the better performances from her recently. I mean, it's certainly no cake, but it's definitely another side to Aniston. Number 4 is actually kind of a tie, because it's Salma Hayek from Dusk Till Dawn. I do agree it's a little overrated, but I actually put Dogma here as well, because I think it's almost like a parody.
That made my short list.
Parody of that whole thing, and I also really liked her character in that movie. So, as the muse, she's pretty memorable as a stripper, even though it's only really like that last part of the movie she's in. Number 3 is Rose McGowan from Planet Terror, mostly because, you said it yourself best, Justin. Stripper with the machine gun leg. But in all honesty, she is awesome in the movie, and Rose McGowan's pretty good in all those related ridiculous exploitation films.
That's the only thing I know about that movie.
It's
machine gun leg.
Honestly, that kind of sums it up. Machine gun leg and zombies. But she's pretty awesome in it, and couldn't have the list without her. Number 2 is different. It's apparently, I guess she's a stripper. Jessica Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's sort of implied.
I would consider her like a burlesque dancer, but
so more traditional.
You can include her.
So I'll include her.
Yeah, sure.
If she's technically a stripper, I feel like she has to make the list, because
she's certainly an exotic dancer, if nothing else.
Which counts.
Yeah.
I would say. Mm-hmm. So hey, even if she doesn't have to show too much, she's still one of the sexiest animated women, and it's pretty much so.
True.
Definitely is up there, but not my number 1.
Okay. Well, my number 1 is Mike Lane, Magic Mike himself. Channing Tatum. I only wanted to put one Magic Mike person on this list, but I could have easily put Matthew McConaughey as Dallas or Tarzan on here.
Tarzan was on the short list.
Love him. But really, Mike is the heart of certainly the first movie before we really get to know any of the other strippers except for Dallas. And just like I said in my XXL review, just to see that he has kept this character going with the same sort of intensity that he had with the first film.
Fervor.
And he's got a fervor. He does. And he has really, I would say both of my favorite dance routines from the first movie include Mike. So, got to put him at number 1. Justin?
Number 1 is David, or Dave, played by Mark Addy, the Full Monty. Wow. Now, honestly, you could probably put anybody from the cast of this movie on the list. But I like Addy's role in this movie particularly because he's the first one to be like, we're minor workers. Why would anyone want to see us strip? But then there's also this really good arc with his character in terms of like, you know what? If you're having fun, who cares? And I think that's beautiful. For that reason, I gotta put him at number 1.
All right. Joe, how about for you?
Well, surprise, surprise, Channing Tatum from Magic
Ooh.
Mike. Just in terms of both, I think his character and definitely being a male stripper is something that's a little rare in Hollywood. So definitely got to see a different side there. But in terms of actual dancing, he's by far the best.
He's great.
So I give him some massive points there. And he definitely was, like you said, he might be the heart of the film. But, McConaughey definitely is a pretty significant part as well.
He is, and that's why he was very missed in the second one. And I would have loved to put him on my list as well.
Yeah, but I guess 2 movies is more than 1, so you gotta balance out
that
way.
you gotta kind of put Mike on there. He came back for the second one at least.
He's got them chaps.
Yeah, that's very interesting. We all had Men as our number 1 of the dancing. I guess maybe because it's a little more rare, so they stand out a little more.
Maybe.
You could say that.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right, well, let's move on to our triple feature of older films. We've got some good ones here, and of course, Minions is coming out. And we'll do that for next week's episode to kick off the show. So our new classic this week is Despicable Me 2. Justin, let's hear about that.
It's been a few years since Gru, voiced by Steve Carell, tried to steal the moon, and mostly he spent the time since being a loving father to his 3 adopted girls. However, that's all until Gru's reluctantly recruited by Lucy, voiced by Kristen Wiig in a different role this time, a member of the Anti-Villain League, to investigate who's responsible for stealing a secret laboratory in the Arctic, and for what purpose. Russell Brand, Benjamin Bratt, and Steve Coogan co-star. I liked the first one enough, but I thought it spent a bit too much on living on 2 separate extremes. The first half of the movie was extremely mean-spirited, and then the latter half was more cutesy and sweet, and I think when I originally reviewed it on my Yahoo account, I called it disgustingly adorable. But the sequel comes into itself a bit more by keeping the story fun, visually appealing, and I would argue actually funnier. The Minions are still far and away the scene stealers. It's probably my biggest issue with both movies, is I feel like I never really seem to be on board until the Minions show up. And even though it gets a little rushed, with the villain honestly not really getting to do anything until the end of Act 2, start of Act 3.
So macho, though.
He is truly macho. It still shows that the franchise is getting better, and hopefully the prequel spin-off will continue the trend. I actually raised my original grade of a B- to a B.
I don't think Despicable Me 2 is as fun as the first one, but I really like that the Gru character continues to grow. But the first movie was so original and seemed to just come out of nowhere. The shoes this one had to fill were almost too big, and as a result, I think some of what we see here is of the more of the same variety, specifically with the Minions, who I think are good in small doses, but I have to tell you, I am bracing myself for an entire movie about them. I don't know how it's going to go over. Like the penguins in Madagascar, you know, I think they're the best part of Madagascar, but in their own movie, I didn't really care for it. I like that they had an evil minion subplot that gave them at least somewhere new to focus those characters. I do think Wiig as Lucy is very good, but I have to admit I like live-action Wiig better. I sort of miss her facial expressions that the animators just weren't really able to capture. But I have to say, it's still very funny. I still love the Gru character. I continue to enjoy this franchise. I stick with my original B for this movie, though it really does teeter on that edge of B+. I almost bumped it up, but I'm going to stick with my B. Joe?
Well, I saw Despicable Me, I think, a little after it was released, maybe about a year or so. So I heard about all the hype. You know how that goes. So I went into it thinking, this is a pretty good movie, but I was a little underwhelmed by it. So when I had to see the second one for the show, I was not really that excited for it. But I actually liked the fact that it took the direction of the original story, and like you said, Gru continues to grow. And I actually liked the conflict dealing with his daughters growing up and him having to kind of struggle with some of the beginnings with
the
relationships
fatherhood issues,
and puberty and stuff like that oncoming. I like that. And maybe I just am kind of more attracted to those type of stories, but I thought it worked pretty well. I thought that Wiig was actually good too, as the romantic interest. I liked that. The biggest thing for me, though, honestly, just kind of it being sort of this kind of almost a parody of the supervillain stuff, I honestly felt that in comparison to the first movie, it had a much funnier, more interesting, and more intimidating villain. And that is always a big factor for me. So overall, I think it's definitely an improvement over the first movie. I'd actually would prefer a Despicable Me 3 to the Minions movie.
Which is coming. So
I like the Minions. I do agree that they were definitely more prevalent in the second movie. And
for better reason.
Yeah, I mean, they were so popular after. I don't think they anticipated how popular they would be after the first movie.
I liked their plot. I thought it was a kind of a cool turn on, the evil Minions, and I'm fine with the Minions. Pretty much, I just don't know if we can carry them with the whole movie. I think that might be a little much. So we'll see, though. I like them enough that I'll give them a shot. Overall, though, Despicable Me 2 is very enjoyable. I actually leave it with a B+.
Okay.
How do you feel about the spin-off being a prequel, just out of curiosity?
Well, I think it's the only way to go with it, because if it's
where's Gru?
Where's Gru? Where's the girls? I mean, it would make no sense in the present day.
It's interesting that you say that, because when I originally heard about the Minions spin-off project, Gru was in it.
Well, I didn't know that. I wonder if maybe there was some scheduling issues with Steve Carell or something, and they couldn't do that. Or maybe because Despicable 3 got greenlit, they were like, well,
he'll be back anyway
in Despicable 3. Maybe we go a different route with the story. So that's possible.
I mean, I'm with you. I have a couple reservations about it. I want to believe it's good, because I think the Minions have been great since day one. However, for me, it's always been a matter of, are we going to get an interesting sidekick having fun with it, like Penguins of Madagascar for Joe and I, or are we going to get Cars 2, where the sidekick is basically an front and center,
Punchline,
and it suffers horribly.
Listen, I gotta say, I think it rarely works. I mean, look at live action movies too. Get Him to the Greek is horrible.
I kind of like that movie.
Okay, well, it stinks.
The songs are good.
You know?
Well, I mean, I saw it once a long time ago, but I thought it was funny. I don't know.
So I think it's a very hard thing to do. And at the same time, maybe it's a good idea because, A, obviously they're so popular, but B, I think the love it or hate it factor of the Despicable movies rests on whether you like the Minions or not. Obviously, if you don't like the Minions, you won't go see them in their own movie. But I feel like if you don't like the Minions, you think they're annoying, it is going to ruin both of the Despicable movies too, because they're, especially the second one, because they're very prevalent. So if you love Gru, if you love the girls, but you don't like the Minions, you're not going to like that movie. At least if you give them their own movie, if you don't like the Minions, then you don't go see it.
Do a lot of people dislike the Minions?
I was gonna say I've yet to meet the Minion hater.
I would say they're fairly popular, but there are people that don't care for them. Yes.
I mean, I guess there would be, but
I think they're funny.
They serve their cute fun.
But I think they're funny as side characters. And
you know what? I'll tell you what. The crux of the movie, and I think, well, there's two things. I think obviously you have Sandra Bullock, so they're going to kind of use her as the Gru in this movie. So how will they interact with her, with Gru, is a factor.
True.
And also how well they write these characters, the Minions, as characters with the minimal dialogue they have.
Yeah.
If they can actually make them more well-rounded, some way, maybe that could work.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the
True.
key thing. If they can sell them as characters, not just as sidekicks.
Well, let me ask you something, Justin, because obviously
Please.
in the Minions movie, we're going to get a whole backstory, and there are going to be these developed characters. So I want to focus on Despicable Me, one, really two, but one also, I guess.
Go on.
More than anybody I have ever met in my life, you hate when animated movies are cute, which I never understood, but there it is. The Minions are very cute. Why are they your favorite part of the movie? What is it about them that separates them from a lot of the other cute-ish
Humor and stuff.
characters that we see?
That is an interesting question.
Well, first of all, that is a very good question.
Thank you.
I feel like in the first movie, it's a bigger issue because they keep trying to find ways to integrate them into these overly cutesy scenarios, which really bothered me.
Okay.
And the second one, they're integral to the plot, so it's a bit more forgivable. In the first one, I'm actually very glad you asked that because one of the biggest issues I had with the original film was Russell Brand. I hated him so much. I thought all of his puns were ridiculous. They were just really cheap ploys for bad comedy. In the second one, there's cutesy scenes, but it's also them being minions, working for Gru, and then having these bizarre excursions. Like my favorite scene in the entire movie, them basically doing bar songs and chowing down on ice cream.
But isn't that cute? I mean, the Minions are cute characters.
I just thought it was entertaining. I didn't think it was cute.
Okay.
But somebody might observe them as cute.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way they're designed. They're designed to be cute.
It's meant to be like the adorable, like plushie thing you can poke.
Yeah.
You know.
Or like a talking strawberry.
Yes, very much like actually
When
very
in doubt,
similar
we come back to
a
Cloudy
talking
2.
Well, because listen, Barry is also integral to the plot. He saves the day in Cloudy 2,
and
but
he's
you hate him.
He's so adorable.
You hate him
However,
so much.
I would like to make the addendum.
Tell me.
No.
Cloudy got jumped up to a B by the year's end.
True, but not because of Barry.
No,
Barry's cool.
one of the reasons.
Barry's cool.
Right, I'm saying not because of Barry.
No, it was one of the reasons it jumped up.
Okay.
Just gotta go to war with the cute humor.
He hates it. You know, it's a movie for children. I don't know. I think it's fine. Well, we'll see how Minions grabs us next week, I guess.
It's either going to be amazing or just too much cute.
I agree. All right, well, up next is my pick for Old Classic, and that is Wet Hot American Summer. This was directed and co-written by David Wayne and starring many of his fellow members in the sketch comedy troupe The State, along with superstars in the making like Bradley Cooper, Paul Rudd, Elizabeth Banks, and Amy Poehler, plus already established actors like Christopher Maloney, David Hyde Pierce, and Janeane Garofalo. Wet Hot is a satirical comedy about the last day at a Jewish summer camp set in 1981. This film is an acquired taste and a cult hit that I wanted to show my fellow critics here leading up to the Netflix prequel series, which debuts this month. The satire builds as the film goes on until it goes so over the top, you wonder if there was even a script involved. But it does employ tons of 80s comedy staples, including great montages and far-fetched beyond reason situations. Now, certainly not all of the comedy works here, and I've always been a bit surprised that the fandom for this film continues to grow. It seemed sort of like, if you watch The State, if you were into, that when it was on in the 90s, you'll like this movie. If you don't know what The State is or who David Wayne is, then you won't like this movie. I was always a fan of The State and the style of humor, so, I'm sort of on board with that. But I am surprised that the legend of this movie has continued to grow. I don't know if that's because Bradley Cooper's involvement, Amy Poehler, I don't know. But I get it. I get what it's about. I think it's funny. But I do think it tries too hard sometimes. I leave it with a B. Joe?
Well, then I have to say I was a little worried about this one.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because as you know, I frequent Ebert's site, and
oh, did he hate it?
I think this was a 0 stars or
wow.
something. This was he despised this one.
Okay.
So I didn't know what to think going in. I was like, oh no. I do agree with you. Not all the jokes work, but I found myself kind of wishing that some of the plots were expanded on a bit. Like, how some subplots kind of had a lot more focus and they came back when you think they didn't really need more time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, was it Maloney as the crazy? Easily my favorite character. He had some good gags, but I feel like there might have been a scene or two more of him that was necessary. I don't know.
I think he probably served his purpose.
I think like,
but...
I mean, the montage, 80s montage training thing was awesome, but he just started popping up all over the place.
There's a lot of characters here. I think there's probably too many characters.
There might
definitely
be.
And too many plots.
But I think most of them are funny, and I think the one I wanted to expand on the most was the awesome chase. The chase, to get back to the intercourse, and it's just like I feel like we missed the whole adventure of awesome gags. Like, we could have used some more of that. But I thought some of the humor did work really well. I think it's because it's so wacky and all over the place, and I feel like a lot of it's improv too.
I sort of get that sense, yeah.
Yeah, but I think for the most part, I think David Hyde Pierce, was seeing him in a very interesting role. He's usually either the sophisticated brother of Frasier, or the sophisticated serial killer, or a fish man.
There's no in between.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess he's more diverse than I give him credit for. But it was really cool to see some of these experienced comedians in a very early ensemble like this. It's silly and all over the place, but I actually really enjoyed how crazy it was. I also leave it with a B.
Okay, Justin?
I find it always surprising that what films end up reaching cult status. I mean, sometimes you get Scott Pilgrim and other things that you think are destined for a cult following never quite reach it. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't necessarily make them a good movie. Such is the case in Wet Hot American Summer. The storyline, I feel like, is mostly just a series of sketches, some with more connectivity than others, that range from funny in the strangest of ways to incredibly disturbing and unsettling, such as in one particular scene where they devote probably a good 2 minutes to watching several of the characters that we've come to see on screen get high and OD, and then by the end of it, it's just, let's throw whatever we didn't think of earlier at the screen and hope something fits, with a weird disaster parody plot, relationship with a child, which is also supposed to be played for laughs, and it really isn't. I'm not going to pretend I didn't laugh at this movie. There are some very funny moments in this, but it also depends on your willingness to accept it at the same time. And for me, that was about 50% of the time. So for me personally, I'm going to leave Wet Hot American Summer with a C.
That's actually a little higher than I thought you were going to give it. I really didn't think you would like it at all.
He laughed a lot,
bracing
though.
I know, but he laughs all through Jump Street. It still gets a B. So I don't. That's not necessarily the go-to gauge for Justin's criteria. I know that.
No, I mean there are some definitely funny scenes in this movie. It's just, for every really good gutbuster, there's also some really, really low blows that are unfunny, borderline offensive.
Oh, I think a lot of it's offensive. I didn't know that it's borderline. I think most, satirical comedy is probably offensive to some degree, yeah.
But also, a comedy is about how effective your jokes can be.
True.
And this movie's more or less, I feel like at the start there's a bit more of a plot, and then as the movie goes on, it's more or less, let's just let it take a backseat to whatever we feel will fit the storyline.
I'd say the main plot's the talent show. It's kind of linking things together.
Leading to it.
There's some hints about it.
I do agree, though, that as it continues to progress, like I said, I mean, it gets
ridiculous,
more and more ridiculous as the scenes continue.
I mean, I was watching the clock, and probably about the halfway point, I was basically staring at it all, just thinking to myself, what is exactly going on here?
It's a bunch of random stuff going on at the same time. It's
Some of it's funny, some of it
kinda.
really isn't.
Well, and you know what? I think you'll get this really anytime a comedy troupe does a movie, like the Kids in the Hall Brain Candy movie, or Monty Python movies. I mean, they're not really plot-driven per se. It is more about sort of the interactions with the different characters in a, I guess, more vignette style.
That's actually a good comparison.
No, that's
you
fair.
know? So I can't say that that's an incorrect statement, but like I said, I mean, you know, people will either like this movie or they won't. I think a C is probably you're one of the few in-betweeners, I would say. I think people either like this movie or it's awful.
No, I mean, I can respect the cult status, and
It's either pretty good or it's horrible.
Yeah, basically.
no, I mean, I do respect the cult status, and I do think there are some legitimately funny scenes in this movie. It's just, I wish it was a bit more consistent.
Why do you think it's developed a cult status? Because I don't think... I mean, it didn't do very well at all in theaters.
Yeah, I didn't think it...
I don't know if it has something to do with Bradley Cooper or not. That's my only thing I can think of.
I'd argue essentially
Or Paul Rudd.
two reasons. The first reason is, as Joe mentioned, brand association. We grew up with... We saw Bradley Cooper, we saw Amy Poehler. There's writing on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
The other reason, and sadly could probably be the reason, is it's one of those movies you can totally see someone taking substances of ill repute and finding it a much better movie than it probably is.
Okay.
Yeah, I could see it as a party movie.
Yeah, I could see it as a party movie as well. That's true. But I'm interested to see where the Netflix story takes it. It's a prequel, so it takes place on the first day of camp as opposed to the last day of camp. Bradley Cooper, Amy Poehler, they've all returned for this thing.
15 years older.
It's got a lot of not just fan cult status, but the people involved are very proud of this movie.
Is Garofalo coming back?
Garofalo, I believe, I think all of the main characters are coming back.
That is kind of
I
awesome.
think all of them. And yeah, Garofalo you don't see anywhere anymore.
Well, she doesn't really do anything anymore.
She's more on the political commentary circuit now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting. I don't know if everybody's in every episode. I don't know if they're going to do like Arrested Development season 4, where they pick like one main person to focus the episode on.
I hope not.
I hope not
hope
too.
That was kind of an issue with
Well, it was awful.
Arrested Development. So.
But yeah, we'll see what happens with that coming to Netflix very soon. So all right, well. We're going to wrap the show up with Babes in Arms for our Oscar A to Z. This is a 1939 film nominated for Best Actor for Mickey Rooney, who was just 19 years old at the time, and Best Score. So, Joe, let's hear about Babes in Blackface. Oh, Babes in Arms, I should say.
I was about to make that joke.
Babes in Arms.
Took it from me.
I stole it from you.
Don't spoil the review.
I knew
for
you were
them.
going to say it. That's why.
Well, you called it. I was thinking I was just going to open with that, but he knows my mind. We're doing the show for too long, guys. All right. Well, Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland star in the struggle of two talented young vaudeville artists to make their own way in show business in a time when film was overtaking the entertainment industry. The music was mostly pretty good here, and the editing was very spot on. I liked the way it was shot. The story also presents an interesting look at the shift in entertainment industry so long ago. We kind of touched on that with Singing in the Rain and some other films we've watched on here. And also some generational comedy, fathers' expectations and sons and so on. Pretty common. But what really shines here are Rooney and Garland's chemistry. I think Rooney especially adds so much energy and fun to his character, while Garland proves that she's not quite Dorothy here. So that's something. This movie was fine until the big climax of the film involving a full-on, no-holds-barred, blackface minstrel show. Now, I know this film was from 1939, and it took place 10 years or so earlier. But it's very surprising that this was shown with not even a possible hint of a negative connotation. Seeing Dorothy in blackface just seems wrong, but taking that aside, I'll leave it with a B-.
Okay, Justin?
Well, it's another wonderful time in the Oscar nominee list that we have to take a step back and consider historical context. Obviously, blackface is a big portion of this in regards to the climax, but I feel like at the time that this is being set, 10, 20, I believe it starts in early 1920s to, I think...
26, I actually think.
Yeah, it starts around 26 or 27, a.k.a. when
Sound
was getting introduced, the jazz singer, which also features a climactic scene in blackface. But it's also one of the movies that we've seen in the Oscar list that is incredibly musically driven in terms of the fact that it's almost completely based around songs, some of which are really, really good and I feel like fit the bill. Watching Rooney and Garland sort of build their talent and try and make a name for themselves and others take a few very odd turns, such as one song devoted to rebellion, which is where the song where the movie Babes in Arms gets its title from.
It's very strange.
Final number is a little bit disturbing in today's day and age, but it's well done and very well performed for what it is.
It's true.
If you can take it in that regard, I'm going to leave it with a C+.
I think many of the song numbers here are great. I think that's, the strongest part of the movie, other than the chemistry between the two leads. Mickey Rooney is fantastic.
Steals it, man.
He steals the show. I'm mainly familiar with him, obviously, in his older age, and then in the museum films, things like that. But here, he's fantastic. It makes me want to see some of his other early work. He's doing impressions. He's doing different accents. Really, he's got that vaudeville spirit, shining through every scene. It's got a story that we've seen, over and over again. Even I think at this time, it probably was a recycled story.
Pretty standard.
But him and Garland really are great together. Though Garland is pretty much Dorothy in vaudeville. She sets her voice apart a little bit. But this was released within a month of The Wizard of Oz, so you can sort of see, all right, she's doing both for MGM at the time. And her Oz co-star Margaret Hamilton shows up, who is basically Elmira Gulch with a different agenda and a different hat here. But the blackface. Okay,
That's hard, man.
Let's just talk about it. I mean, it really is a question of how much can you let it affect the grade. You have to take in the context, like both of you have said. Wizard of Oz is my all-time favorite movie. It was very disturbing to see Dorothy in blackface, like you said, Joe.
A little wrong.
It was, and because they were shot the same year, it's like she is the same person. It's not Dorothy 10 years later in blackface. It's not kid Dorothy. It's 19, 20-year-old Judy Garland, Dorothy Gale in blackface, and it's hard. I'm gonna leave the movie with a B- as well, because I think it has a lot of good things going for it. I do like the song numbers. Mickey Rooney's fantastic. I'd give him probably an A.
He's an A.
Himself. But even for the time, I just...
It's a little iffy.
Find it hard to believe that was cool. And it's weird
You don't think so?
Well, on film, 10 years... see, the thing about it is... it is interesting, historically speaking, around the time the film's taking place, vaudeville was really on its last legs. If it had taken place closer to the beginning of the century, that would have been all the rage.
Minstrel shows were a big part of vaudeville, so
They were, but that was also a little past the height of it. And, well, the thing is, I think what Dan's saying is the portrayal of it on the film, even in historical context within the film, for it to be that elaborate and that much effort put into it, and not even a mild suggestion of anything off about it. Because even in 39, that might not have gone over so well.
I don't think it was that uncommon, Joe.
We see a lot of racist stuff in these old movies.
We do.
A lot of them actually geared towards the Asian community.
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of very, very broad, quote-unquote, comedic, Asian portrayals.
You know what, though? You say that. I think that all of those were relatively minor. Not like an entire section of the movie was not put upon a focus for them.
And
Even
that was
Auntie
going...
Mame?
Not
and
Auntie
that was
Mame.
going to be my point.
Auntie Mame? Yeah, that's a good one. Sorry, that's what I was thinking of.
That's fine.
The Auntie Mame character there is a butler, who I kind of liked, honestly. I wish he wasn't a caricature, but they still show that he was a good person.
Mm-hmm.
They still showed he was a human being, even if he was a caricature. Here, I believe there might have been one or two black people in the film just helping them put on clothes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And in literally the same section, you have an entire section devoted to this in something that is blatantly racist.
Now, that being said, though, gentlemen, I appreciate that we are allowed as a movie-going population to see this movie the way it was originally shot. Mm-hmm. You can't even air the Dukes of Hazzard on TV now because it has a Confederate flag on the hood. Come on.
That's a very good point.
I as wrong as it is and as much as it pained me to watch, I appreciate that we're allowed to see it.
Well, you can't forget your history.
Because you can't forget your history. And just like the Popeye cartoons that we watched, with the Native American stuff, which is horribly racist, but that was from the 1920s. There has to be some context, but this was rough.
It's a little much.
It was a little too much. Now, I've never seen The Jazz Singer. Justin, maybe you have.
I have.
Okay. I mean, how does it compare? Is the jazz singer, like, is he in blackface the whole movie?
No. It's,
Okay.
this, it's only in the final sequence.
Oh, okay.
Which is done better.
No, I'd say they're about on par. I mean, the production values on in Babes in Arms is significantly higher.
Oh, wow.
And the jazz singer, it's very much devoted to sound because obviously talkies were all the rage. But
Makes sense.
But I mean, they're about on par in terms of overall, like, is this racist? Is it not racist? I mean,
You know
this
what?
was 39, Jazz Singer was 27. But I mean, like I said, these are vaudeville performers trying to branch out. Is it right? No. Is it something that they would do and is totally in character? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that. I just think it's interesting, though, that, like, for their final saving grace to save their show, they go for something that's completely expected. I mean, as you said, they're a staple. It's not, I mean, they were popular, but it's blackface minstrel show. It's kind of go-to.
Pretty standard.
It's not
for
breaking the
time.
mold for vaudeville, so.
I just hate that it was Judy Garland myself.
That's kind of the worst part.
It really is. If it was, no-name 1930s actress, fine. It's certainly one to check out if you're interested in the history of cinema and the history of vaudeville, for sure. Because, like Justin says, it is a product of the time.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
As a movie on the whole, it's probably so-so, even
average.
regardless of the blackface. But Mickey Rooney, certainly.
Mickey's the best part, for sure.
For sure.
Far and away.
For sure. All right, well, that's going to do it for the show this week. Next week, as we've talked about, we'll have a Minions review and some of the other new films for you. Joe, lots of stuff happening with the Merlin Channel. We will be starting the Boldly Going series very soon with the Star Trek. Sure.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah.
I think it's time.
We'll probably we'll
Now
start.
The Sopranos is over.
It's rounds. We'll do some. We'll figure it out how I'm going to set it up, I guess. But we'll just try to make that maybe like a weekly or monthly thing for the channel. And of course, I'll be doing some other movie reviews and various other things. New Dragon Ball show on, so
There it is.
but, that's hard to believe, but that's happening. And yeah, a lot of stuff's happening. So definitely check it out.
All right, and we continue to get subscribers, so we certainly appreciate that. If you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that. And if you have, well, tell a friend and get them on board with Film Fanatics. And you can join us on Twitter at Film Fanatics Pod and the Facebook group Film Fanatics with an exclamation point. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you back here next time. Bye!